What's going on, guys? I'm back with another video, and this one is going to be on a knife that I feel like everyone has been asking me to talk about for quite some time. This is my Jason Guthrie Scout. I've had this knife for a few months. I did send it in, I did get it back. I'll talk about all of that. And I'll talk about the reason why it's taken so long to make this video. But first, let's go ahead and roll the intro.
Keystone Cops.
All right, guys, let's talk about what I'm carrying today. I'm carrying my 4V Manix 2. I had a chance to pick one of these up and I couldn't pass it up. I heard great things about 4V and I wanted to check it out. So far so good. I haven't had a ton of time using this knife, but the fit and finish is awesome. It came very sharp out of the box, and so far it has performed very well for the limited use that I've had with this knife. But back to the knife at hand. So how did I come to own a Jason Guthrie Scout? What has been my experience, and what is this backstory I kind of keep talking about? First and foremost, I'll go ahead and forewarn you, if you want just a shining, glowing, rainbows and unicorn talk about this knife, this is not the video for you. So you can go ahead and click off now. I know whenever I say that, it seems like people stick around and then they leave comments, and I don't understand. I honestly don't. I don't know why you watch something you don't want to watch and then leave a comment about something that you knew you weren't gonna like, or you've been at least fairly forewarned you're not gonna like. But anyway, I ended up, Daddy-O EDC Mason, he talked about this knife a lot. I would see it in his videos. I would see it in his Instagram. I would see him posting it in his story. I would hear him talking about it on his live. He, I don't think it's any secret that this is his favorite knife, at least to the best of my knowledge, or at one point in time, it was his favorite knife. This is May of 2020, so, for frame of reference, if you're watching this in the future. He always would talk about the performance of the knife and just how good of a user this knife was. And I had been into custom knives maybe 12 plus years ago, but I got out because, at least at that point in time, my experience with the custom knife world was heavily focused on looks, and it was not so much focused on use. And you guys know I'm more about use than looks, even though, nobody's gonna turn down a knife that has some attractive features, which kind of gets into a subjective area, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. So after hearing him talk about it, my ears had kind of been perked up, my eyes were kind of open. I started doing some digging and some research. I looked out on Instagram, saw several pieces of his work, read the comment sections under several posts, saw lots of good comments, started watching YouTube, started searching on YouTube for these knives, saw lots of good content. Then I ran across some videos from Jason, and I also did some research on Jason. So I found out that Jason is from a family that trains people, does weapons training with people. So that further piqued my interest, because you all know that I'm interested in that kind of thing as well. And from there, I started looking into his knife making and his philosophy of knife making from his mouth directly, from his videos directly, and from his work directly. So after watching some videos, I heard him talk about his desire to create a knife that was a user, and that is what I'm into. As I said just a few minutes ago, I wanted a knife that was a user that also may happen to look good. So I ended up trying to get on the books. Back up. In that, I'll cover a few key features that even demonstrate that in his design. So this knife here happens to be about 9 thousandths behind the edge, and I will try to capture that, but it is a very thin bevel, and I don't know that I will be able to capture it on camera. So let's zero this out, and I will try to get in here. There we go. It's reading about, oops. Well, I think it slipped. Hold on a second. All right, there we are. It's reading about 995. I think you guys can see that. And it pretty much reads that way all the way along the blade. So you can see there it's about 7. It's about 7. And up here, if I can get it. And up here at the tip, it's about 4.5 or 4.5 or 5 thousandths. I think you guys can see that in the video. So it's actually a little bit thinner, than my original measurements, but that is what part of what this knife is known for, and part of his design philosophy of it being an excellent knife, good for slicing, good for cutting through things that may be a little bit more dense, more thick, like double-walled cardboard, etc., etc., etc. He also has the Guthrie tungsten insert, which is that shiny piece right there. There's a rod of tungsten that's inserted into the end of the lock bar and interfaces with the tang of the blade. This is supposed to increase the life of the lock. So just to give you the most utilitarian experience possible, just an all-out user of a knife. So that is what kind of drew me in to the knife itself. So fast forward, I just happened to be lucky enough that right around the time I was looking, maybe about 2 weeks to a month after that, his books opened up. I sent the email. I ended up getting onto the books. He said I was fairly high on the list as well. So he and I talked. We discussed a few things. I told him that I wanted a full titanium handle because, again, you know, I'm more of a utilitarian guy. I like a little bit of heft, and I'm glad that I went with the full titanium handles because I knew the knife was going to be slightly on the smaller side, which my hand is 4.5 inches from side to side, from one side of my palm to the other, but I can still get my entire hand on this knife, and I have not had any issues with comfort or anything like that when using this knife. So the full titanium without any of the milling, any of the lightning holes or anything like that, speed holes some people call them, it has made for a knife that I feel is pretty much what I would expect as far as weight for a knife of this size. So I'm very glad that I went with the titanium handles on both sides and no milling. I did ask for the high track finish. That's these dimples here. I've heard people call them raindrops, dimples, whatever. He calls it a high track finish. He asked me, did I want media blasted or did I want polished? I told him, you know, you kind of surprised me. He did polished, and I'm glad he did. I really like the looks of this handle. And it's from every time I post this knife, it seems like everybody does as well. We talked about the obviously the blade shape. I ended up going with a Harpoon Wharncliffe, which is the design I wanted, just because I feel like that tip being so low. Again, this is just a utilitarian knife. Vinny Nero Knives, he kind of talked about this recently in a video between the Insingo and the Drop Point 21. So you can kind of go over there and check that video out if you want to kind of see why the difference in where your tip is at can play a big role in the uses your knife is good for. And I wanted this knife to be good at cutting a lot of cardboard and things of that nature, because that's what it's thin behind the edge, and that's the role that I envision this knife in, being the slicer blade in my pocket next to my Strider S&G for more hard use tasks. So we talked about the blade shape. I picked the blade shape. We talked about the hardness of the blade. I inquired about maybe bumping the hardness up a little bit. He said, you know, that wasn't something he was interested in doing. Kind of left it there because Bowler does his heat treatment and all that stuff. So, you know, I just, it wasn't worth kind of the whatever it would take to get that done. So we kind of left that alone. And then I asked for a belt satin finish because, again, I'm a user guy. I've seen his blades in the past. They've had belt satin finishes, and his philosophy is to make a knife that is a user. He says that he doesn't do belt satin, I guess, anymore. He does hand-pulled satins or man, I'm drawing a blank now. I'll just call it hand-pulled satins. And because he feels as though he wants to put out the highest quality product possible, and he feels as though a hand-pulled finish is high quality. You know, I think that's kind of the first place I'll deviate there is, I disagree to the extent that I think it's more about the execution and not the finish itself. I think you can have a low quality hand satin. I think you can have a low quality belt satin, and vice versa. But I just think that, especially the way this knife came out, if it had a belt satin, it would just kind of scream, use me. So that was kind of the first thing that, you know, kind of threw me off, and we did talk about that a little bit back and forth. Anyway, the knife showed up. I was honestly and frankly a little bit disappointed that I could not get the hand satin, so I ended up sitting the knife to the side for a while. Really didn't use it, didn't know if I was going to keep it or sell it. From that point, I kind of picked the knife up one day, and I don't know why, but I flipped it over and I looked down the knife, and I noticed, and you can kind of see it on this one. This is a replacement blade. The plunge, the grind is higher on this side than it is on this side of the knife. So I believe you guys can see that. So he and I discussed that. I'll talk about that at the end of the video. Like I said, I know a lot of people won't want to hear any of that stuff. So he ended up, he paid for shipping to have the knife shipped back. The knife ended up coming back. He paid for that as well. He was nothing but a gentleman about the entire process. He had the knife for about a week, not even, maybe like 3 to 4 days. And then it already in the post back to me. So he made it as smooth of a transition as possible. I got the knife back, and, you know, again, I was kind of still on the fence. I had a lot of issues. It came back DHL, and I don't know what you guys know about DHL, but it's not the most convenient if you miss a shipment, and I didn't want to just sign to have it left on my doorstep. So I just had a lot of headaches. So again, I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I don't have my belt satin. I'm done with this shipping situation, which is no fault of Jason's at all. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I sat it to the side for a while before I ended up picking it up and using it. And I've used it for about the past 3 weeks or so. I brought it to work with me. I've used it to cut underlayment tape. I'm not in construction, but if you don't know what underlayment tape is, it's tape that's maybe about this wide, maybe, you know, about 4 inches wide, and it's very thick and tough. And you put it on underlayment. It's part of the process to meet code, and it holds down that the underlayment. I needed to hang some signs and some stuff like that at work, and that's what they gave us since we have some construction going on. It did very well at that. I had a lot of things that I thought I was going to sell. I ended up selling them all, and I had boxes set to the side to ship those items, but I didn't end up needing all the boxes that I had. So I had about 10 boxes sitting to the side that needed to be broken down. I broke down those boxes. I've used the knife to open several packages. I'm trying to think of what else I've done with the knife. Just a lot of that kind of task. So I would say maybe I've broken down roughly, I don't know, maybe 20 boxes or so with this knife in the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I haven't had any issues. It's been a very comfortable knife. Like I said, even with the size of my hand is 4.5 inches from one side of the palm to the other. It has been a very ergonomic knife in my hand. No problems there. I did notice that day I broke down the 10 boxes all at once, 10 or so boxes all at once. The lock did seem to shift. I wouldn't call it a slip or a slide. It kind of shifted over a little bit, and you know, that's from squeezing the knife. And it didn't really stick, but it took a little bit more pressure to disengage. The engagement point hasn't changed. I have not experienced that since, so you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just breaking in. The knife, I noticed it kind of lost its sharpness. I don't know. I wasn't keeping a very close eye on how long it kept an edge, but it lost its sharpness maybe about those 10 boxes. It lost its sharpness. I stropped it up. It would cut magazine paper very well. Since then, like I said, I've broken down maybe 10 more boxes, 5-10 more boxes, and this is the edge that I have on it now. So you can see it'll cut, but it's not necessarily the best edge. And when I stropped it, I guess I should have mentioned that. When I stropped this, I stropped it on 1 micron diamond spray, CBN diamond spray from Ken Schwartz, and that spray was on a leather strop. So that was the process I used. It felt very sticky after that stropping. It did hold that edge for a little bit, but as you can see, this knife, in my opinion, needs to be sharpened. So I don't know, take that for what you take it for. I'm not saying that's great. I'm not saying it's awful. I'm just saying that is my observation. And that's part of the problem. I know there's a lot of talk every time cardboard cutting comes up and things like that. But when you just kind of anecdotally use a knife like this, there's no way to kind of really gauge if that is good or bad. So I would say it was pretty mediocre, in my opinion. I was hoping for a little bit more, but it is what it is. After getting the knife back, I'll kind of get into some of the backstory now. So after getting the knife back, I did look the knife over, and this is part of what took so long for me to make this video. I kind of had some disappointments again. And this is where this knife is an excellent tool. It's everything that Mason was talking about from a tool aspect, but being that this knife was a $900 custom knife, I don't necessarily feel like I'm getting as much custom pizzazz as I would like, as much custom accoutrement as I would like. So, and I've already kind of shown you where the plunge is off a little bit. When Jason and I talked about that, he basically was saying, nobody can get a perfect plunge, which I agree with. But what I talked with him about is the fact that it's visible to the naked eye. You can just kind of glance at it and see it. I didn't really think that was in line with a knife of this price point that was a custom knife, in my opinion, and it's not based on my experience. Like I said, I've owned probably seven custom knives or so from various makers over 12, 13, 14, 15 years. So that hadn't been my experience. And then also what I noticed when looking the knife over, and I hope this comes across on camera, you can see here how this swedge, it kind of goes up. It's not really in line with the spine of the blade here, but on this side, it's noticeably broader, and it does go down a little bit more into this radius area here and almost in line with the spine of the blade. So, and I'll show you that again. You can see how it's kind of up at the start of that radius here. It's kind of up here at the start of this radius. And then on this side, it's lower. This is broader, which means this grind is lower. And you're already into this, the radius of the spine here. So again, that wasn't something that I love from a custom standpoint. The knife, Jason has been nothing but a gentleman. Jason has been polite, helpful. Like I said, he paid for shipping both ways. He made sure that he turned the knife around in 1 week. The knife was shipped in a plastic, like Mylar mailer type deal, DHL mailer. If you guys have gotten anything via DHL, you know what I'm talking about. And I expressed my concern with that because I've had bad experiences, even with a custom knife that was in two United States Postals Mylar mailers, and somehow they got torn open accidentally. That was the story the post office told me. I was able to get my knife back. He ended up putting it into a box for me. which was my request. So like I said, he's been nothing but a gentleman about all of those types of things, and I can't complain there. This is a tool that has been a very functional tool. I'll have to sharpen it and kind of keep a closer eye on the edge retention. I would like to see, at least my initial impression, I would like to see a little more edge retention out of this M390. I don't feel like it was anything spectacular. It didn't kind of like wow me with the length that the length of time the edge lasted, and just some of the finishing work on the grinding and the not being able to get the belt satin kind of, again, just being honest with you, left me a little bit cold on the custom aspect of the knife. But it is an awesome tool. I don't regret having the knife, and after using this knife, it is something that I plan on keeping and using, and I know it'll give me many, many years of service because it does have those features built into it that I've already talked to you all about. So again, that's just my experience with the knife. I know that is not the glowing report that you usually hear about Scout's or Jason's work, and it is what it is. It's not meant to be any slight about the knife or Jason whatsoever. It's just my experience. And like I said, it's a knife I plan on keeping. It's a knife I plan on using. And Jason has been nothing but a gentleman and a scholar. So, oh, let me do one last thing. And I know I should have probably done this much earlier. Size comparison for you guys. And let me turn them this way. I don't like to compare knives size-wise that way. So you can see it's similar in size to a Manix 2. But that's it, guys. I appreciate you guys watching. Man, this is 20 minutes long. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife, and don't be a dumb person with a smartphone.